He's a Jacksonian Democrat. That's what he's today. All right. So today's a big day. Today's a big day. Jackson is a
hero.
To some. Jackson's a huge part of the curriculum, though. We look at Jackson as one of those turning point presidencies, where we kind of end one era and usher in a new era in American history. So Jackson as a turning point, Jackson as a really controversial figure, Jackson as somebody who expands the executive branch, is a fascinating dude, and I find very interesting to teach. And if you ask Hector, every year kids find Jackson quite interesting to learn. So all those reasons that Jackson's a significant dude, he's a fascinating dude, his presidency is important, sure. Also, the College Board loves Jackson. So because the College Board loves Jackson, you will learn to love Jackson as well. And when I say the College Board loves blank, I don't mean like they actually enjoy the person, it just means they enjoy to test it. Jackson's always a heavily tested figure. Last year's kids were disappointed that Jackson did not show up anywhere, which means we are overdue for Jackson. We're overdue for Jackson. Period 4 was really light last year. In general, Market Revolution wasn't tested, Jackson wasn't tested, Second Great Awakening wasn't tested, War of 1812 wasn't tested, so it means period 4 is a little bit ripe to be picked on this year, because that's usually the way things go. So I don't make money in the business of predicting AP tests, but I like to make inferences based on trends and observations of what's happened in the past. So period 4 is due, period 4 is ripe, so know it, own it. Jenry, what is Jackson getting at in general? Just a couple word phrase here, sir.
Jackson is saying that nullification is detrimental to the nation and that it goes against the Constitution.
Beautiful. That's it. That to nullify a law is against the nation's security. It's incompatible with the existence of a union at all. You can't have a union and also believe in nullification. Because if a state can just cancel whatever laws they want, then what connection with bond do you have? But then let's take a step back, right? Jackson is elected as a southern, western, frontier, Democratic Republican. I thought Democratic Republicans believed in states' rights. Am I right? Yeah, Jackson is elected as a president who believes in states' rights. Is this compatible with a states' rights perspective? No. So is it safe to say that maybe the reality of American politics is most people, whether they believe in federal authority or state authority, aren't extreme? That you can believe in states' rights, in the 10th Amendment, in states having the right to do their own thing and to have their own powers, and that you can believe in a strict interpretation, and that the federal government shouldn't be able to make a bank. But you can also then be a states' rights supporter and not believe all the way to the extreme of nullification. That you can be a states' rights supporter that doesn't believe all the way to that far extreme of nullification. Is that reasonable? Is that kind of getting your mind around it? So you can be a Democratic Republican and a supporter of states' rights and a supporter of strict interpretation in terms of federal versus state authority, but then also not believe that a state can just cancel a federal law when they feel like it. And that's where Jackson lies. So get that confusion out of the way early. So today we're talking about the era of Jackson, Jacksonian democracy, it's often called. And his legacies in terms of the political system will be felt long after his presidency. Long after presidency. And then, because this is the era of the rise, the creation of modern American democracy. Modern American politics. How politics functions today looks a lot like how politics functioned in the era of Jackson in some ways. In other ways, it's a lot different. I don't know, today, women vote. Weird, I know, it's crazy. I know, it's weird. People of color vote. But this is the era in which we start seeing, for the first time, poor people vote. That's a big deal. So democracy starts to better reflect American society as a whole. The era of Jackson and the rise of modern democracy. Prompt is here for you. Cortez, read it for nice and loud, bro.
Evaluate the extent to which state versus federal created conflict in American politics from 1800 to 1832.
Yeah. State versus federal ideology. Created conflict in American politics from 1800. That's all the way back to Jefferson. It's a longer prompt if we get to it. I'm asking you for a bigger window of time now. Expect that going forward, that you'll be asked to answer questions that aren't just specific to today, but are specific to the broader developments that we're talking about, starting to tie things. As we have more things to tie together, tie more things together. So this is a bad map because the colors show up way better on my screen than they do on the board. This is not good at all. We can't see any of these colors, can we?
Yeah.
A little bit.
All right, give me a second. Take a look at this map while I find a better one. Please do so quietly. This is better. Yes? Not bad. Just giving a hard time.
See what you did, Chris?
I didn't do it. I didn't know what he meant by it. Not said, just
Use your left hand?
Me too.
Yeah.
Shut up.
All right, guys. I need you quiet now. Thank you. Love it.
Melting mint chocolate chip.
Is that Terry Tatum?
Yeah, Terry Tatum. Like Jason Tatum. Terry Tatum.
All right. So take a minute with your partner, please. Here's the election map from 1824. I have popular vote percentage, which as you guys know doesn't matter, but it still tells us a lot, and electoral college percentage, which matters more. That's who elects. That's how you elect the president. So take a minute looking at the numbers. Who wins the election in 1824 and why? Go.
Jackson.
Okay, take a minute and talk about why. How do you know?
Because he was in. Because. Oh, that's right. Jackson. Adams won. I mean, Jackson. Adams won.
How?
It was the corrupt. The corrupt. Just because he didn't win by
I know. That's what I'm here to teach you, though. Make sure they're really simple. All right. So just according to the map, Chavez, according to the map, who wins?
According to that,
Yeah,
it was fair if Jackson
Jackson wins. Why does Jackson win?
because he has more higher percentage.
Because he has a higher percentage of the vote. Eliam, does Jackson win in the electoral college, the popular vote, or both? Both. Both.
So
We have, now my better question is, does this map reflect an era of politics that we've characterized as the era of good feelings? Ruby, why not?
Because it's the population and the own party. It seems like they all have their own individual political beliefs.
So it doesn't look at all like we are a divided union in terms of politics. I see 4 candidates that are getting a significant chunk of votes. Also important to note, do you guys see a little bit of sectionalism? Yeah, we see a ton of votes here, and then in these southern regions, things are a little more divided. It looks like the South is more pro-Jackson, the West is more pro-Clay, and then we got this Crawford doing in a couple random states that are kind of split up. So you can almost say that it looks like the North is pro-JQA, Quincy Adams, yes. The South is pro-Jackson, and the West is pro-Clay. Is that reasonable to say? Yeah. So, I know you guys read this, but sometimes it's helpful to really break it down on the electoral map. Why doesn't Jackson win? Not because of Clay, but you're right.
The corruption bargain, because he didn't win by that much.
Because he did not get 50% of the Electoral College. That's the key. All you need to do here is get to 50%. And you win the presidency. Because nobody can have more if you have more than 50%, right? Because with me so far?
Yeah.
When this is the first time this has happened, when you don't get 50%, this is the first time on this scale. 1800 is a little questionable there as well, but we don't worry about it. When you don't get 50%, who decides the president?
Congress.
House of Representatives. Who do they decide between?
Jackson.
They decide between the top 3 vote getters. Clay is 4th. So Clay is no longer an option. What position does Clay hold? I told you on Monday. Nope, not at this time. Speaker of the House of Representatives. Who runs the House of Representatives? The Speaker of the House. Who's Speaker of the House? Clay. So Clay, who finishes 4th, is now the guy who's going to push votes to decide who the next president will be. I know. Who does Clay hate? Jackson. So despite the fact that Jackson has the most popular votes, has the most electoral college votes, and his little enemy, his little buddy Clay, finishes 4th, it's Clay that's going to help decide who wins the presidency. Shady? Corrupt? Questionably. Who knows? Who knows? Who's this going to piss off? So this is why this defines early modern politics. Because Jackson will begin campaigning for president the minute all this goes down. First time we see a modern presidential campaign of a candidate campaigning for themselves, of putting supporters together, of pulling factions from different groups. And it all comes off of this hatred of what happens to Jackson in 1824. So back to my map. I'm sorry the colors are bad. I'll fix it for first period. We see quite clearly Jackson has the most popular support. Doesn't win the presidency. The fun part is, the election of 1824, we have a 4-way presidency race, as you guys just saw, and apparently, they're all from the same party. Which, again, shows me that the era of good feelings is really over. The Democrats can't even decide on one candidate. The 4 candidates each have sectional support. Crawford from Georgia, Quincy Adams from Massachusetts, Jackson from Tennessee, and Clay from Kentucky. As I just talked about, anytime somebody does not get the majority of the vote, the top 3 candidates are voted on in the House. Each state gets 1 vote in that process. Jackson doesn't have the majority. Clay throws his support, and therefore the support of the entire West, behind Quincy Adams. The combination of combining Clay with the Northeastern support from an old Federalist, Quincy Adams, is enough votes for Quincy Adams to get the presidency. And 2 weeks later, what do you know? Quincy Adams is named Secretary of State. Why is that position important? In a sense, yes. Same. That in American history to this point, a ton of Secretary of State to become president. It's looked at, it should be known as a stepping stone to the presidency. That you serve in Congress normally, you serve as Secretary of State, you go from Secretary of State, you run for president, you win. Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, Quincy Adams, Clay, so he'll be fifth. Yes?
He was Speaker of
The House. So he was Speaker of the House. The House is in charge of the vote. Once he pushes the vote in charge of Quincy Adams, oh, what do you know? 2 weeks later, Clay, Secretary of State. Now, there's nothing documenting this being a corrupt bargain. There's no evidence of this. There's no letter that says, hey, buddy, I got your back if you got mine. Hey, I'll do you a solid. I'll give you the presidency. Throw me a bone, make me Secretary of State. There's no documentation of this corruption. But you guys all just admitted it looks corrupt on its surface. Where there's smoke, there's fire. Or somebody's getting really hot, one or the other. Right? Or it's vape or it's Brett with his new vape pen. Right? Yeah, whatever it's called. It's like we're smoking on a USB stick. Get out of here. Why, Brett? Good question. So Jackson is furious. He charges this is corruption. I have been robbed of the presidency. Jackson starts campaigning to let more people vote because he says, if all the common man could vote, I would have had no problem winning the presidency. I'm a commoner like them. They're the ones who can't vote. My people can't be heard. And it really does change American politics forever. Here's my point. Adams went from vice president to the presidency, but Thomas, Secretary of State, president. Madison, president. Monroe, president. Quincy Adams, president. Clay,
Psych.
that was never president. You suck. Yeah. So, Clay is the only early real Secretary of State that runs for president and never becomes president, because Henry Clay runs for president 100 times but never dies. So, Adams becomes president. Clay is Secretary of State. Adams, look at that. Hands down, the most beautiful man that's ever been president. What do you mean he's ugly? That's my great uncle. All white people are related.
Am I related?
I'm kidding. I told you last time he looks like a bearded egg. Yeah. So under him, he does his best. Where's he from? No. Where's he from? No, not Quincy Adams. Massachusetts. He's from New England. What party was his dad from? Yeah, so he has some national government ideals. Those ideals would have disqualified him from the Democratic Republicans 20 years ago. This is important, guys, for politics. His ideals would have made him not a Democratic Republican in 1800. But like I told you last class, the Democratic Republicans kind of shifted to the middle. He's part of that new wing that's kind of like a Federalist light, but a Democratic Republican. He's going to push for Clay's American system of like the new bank, tariffs, infrastructure, things that are more old Federalist ideals. He's going to slap one of the most important tariffs in American history, the Tariff of Abominations. That's not what it's actually called, but it's called that in South Carolina at the very end of his presidency, which is a huge tariff on imported goods, pissing off the South. He's going to be very generous and kind to the Native Americans and not kick them out, even though a lot of these Southerners and Westerners want the Indians kicked out. And all of these things are going to really piss off the Jacksonian supporters. They will become known as the Jacksonian Democrats, who will shortly from now be known as simply the Democrats. So his presidency is super challenging. He was not elected with popular support. He did not win a majority of the votes or even the most votes. So in terms of like popular support, doesn't have a lot of it. B, where is his support from?
The North.
Yeah, it's very regional support. That's important. It should be in your notes. That because his support is regional, it's difficult for him to govern the entire country. 3, he wants to keep these nationalist ideas and the arrogant feelings. But isn't the arrogant feelings gone? Yeah. You can make a good argument right now that the three things that really end the era of good feelings, you guys should know: Panic of 1819, Missouri Compromise, election of 1824. The Depression in 1819, they're going to limit his policies. Few of his goals become law. He finally passes a really big tariff in 1828, which makes Clay happy because Clay likes tariff. But it's going to really piss off the South. It's not good. One exception we can give him credit for, he gets through this Clay-esque policy of the new national road, which is kind of cool. It's a national road. There's a map of it. It goes from Baltimore, so right there on the Chesapeake. Here's Washington, D.C. Here's Jamestown. So from the Chesapeake all the way across into basically the end of American society at that time, the Mississippi River and St. Louis. I told you guys earlier in the class, the Mississippi River plays a huge role in early American history. Here's another example of the Mississippi River popping up. So that's it. That's Quincy Adams' presidency.
Wow.
Ready? Yep. Have I covered a presidency as fast as I just did? No. Yeah. It might have been 7 minutes. Who knows? So yeah, that's Quincy Adams' presidency because it's very hard to govern when you don't have public support. He doesn't have public support from day one, and he's trying to govern an era that no longer exists. That's a good way to think about it. Right? He's trying to govern an era that no longer exists in American society. Best president ever, John Quincy Adams.
So who do you think the best president?
I'll talk about that later. That's a Thursday question. Thursday afternoon question.
I know.
Today is.
It's a Thursday afternoon question.
Yeah.
After school question.
I know who president.
Who?
Donald Trump. I follow him on Instagram.
They follow you back?
No, he doesn't follow Mexicans. Yep. Yeah. So the important piece is, while this is all happening, the U.S. is becoming more democratic. This is a big general theme of period 4. Throughout this process, the U.S. democracy is becoming more democratic. We're letting more people into the process. So, in this time period, for the entirety of period 4, we see a variety, almost every state, getting rid of the two things that are keeping people from voting. And by people, I mean white dudes. The first is a property restriction. You can only vote if you own property, which allows who to vote?
The rich.
Yeah, only the rich to vote. So it allows people that aren't rich to vote. The second is you can only vote if you pay taxes. When do you pay taxes? If you have a job, kind of thing. Right, to your local community and everything else. So the states get rid of that, which allows people that are poor, people that are younger, people that are unemployed, people that don't own property. This whole wage laboring class I talked about, that whole like lull, but the male side, that whole factory wage class, the whole poor farmer in the South that doesn't own land, it allows them to vote. And with it, we see the percentage of people that actually vote go way up. Check this out. From one election to the next, from Quincy Adams to Jackson, it goes from 27% of people voting to 58%. The percentage of people voting more than doubles. That's why Jackson gets elected 4 years later. Because now we have a much more robust democracy, and people vote for people that represent them. Quincy Adams is a Northeast elitist. Jackson's an everyday kind of dude. So when more everyday people vote, they're voting for more of an everyday people kind of dude. So this expansion of the electorate is very important in period 4. This expansion of who has a say, when you give more people a say, in theory, you'll get more of a common man type of dude running for president. Jackson in 1828. Jackson in 1832. So this is some of the more democratic times in American history in terms of the percentage of people that actually vote. So there's my other map, because I like to show you maps, because maps matter. In 1800, the only states that allow universal male white suffrage, every white dude to vote, is Kentucky and Vermont. The green means you got to have some property, and the red means you have to be a taxpayer. Fast forward just 30 years, what do you see? Yeah. But we got rid of, for the most part, property qualifications. And now all you have to do is be a taxpayer with a job, and you can vote. We've also added universal male white suffrage to South Carolina, Maryland, New York, Vermont. This shows both of these. show an expansion of the electorate. That's important. More people can vote. We also create direct balloting for the presidency. Or I should say direct balloting for, oh, look at that, go back. Direct balloting for the Electoral College. So the old system looks like this. It's much more of an aristocracy. I love it. The voters pick their state government. Their state government picks the Electoral College people, and they pick the president. That's the old system. By the time Jackson gets elected, we replaced it with this. We get rid of this layer. So now the voters pick the presidential electors, and then the presidential electors pick the presidency. So it becomes a much more direct evolution of democracy, where there still is the Electoral College, but now they're responding directly to the popular vote, as opposed to who the state wants to run for president. It democratizes democracy. I'm going to pause here and take a question or two. I'd love anybody that wants some clarification or confusion on these issues. Yes, sir.
Do we still use this system today?
Yes. Yes. So we, in a sense. Now it's basically, now the way it works is the winner-take-all system for almost every state. Where we vote in California, whoever wins the popular vote for the presidency, the president gets all of California's electoral votes. So basically it's still this with a little bit of evolution. Yes?
During what time was this again?
The 1800, 1800s. This is in the 1820s. Yeah, so this whole evolution of democracy is an important theme and period for it. That our democracy is getting more democratic. Cool. Yes? Sure. So by 1836, to Slane's question, voters in every state, except for, of course, South Carolina, are casting direct ballots for the presidential electors. So 1836 is our big year. 1860s in South Carolina changes, but 1860s also when South Carolina secedes and leaves the country. So we try not to value their opinion too much. I can't remember somebody from South Carolina like stumble on my YouTube videos. Why does this guy hate my state so much? Watch the rest of the videos. You'll know. The hell? This goddamn California liberal. He's a disgrace to the white people everywhere. So, big picture, this experience in 1824 is very damaging for the Jacksonians. And they changed their approach. By realizing more people can vote, you have to appeal to more people. You don't have to just campaign for the rich landowners. You got to campaign to everybody. The 1828 election we consider one of the first modern elections. For the first time, we see an actually well-organized and national campaign. A campaign that brings in factions of people from here, people from here, people from here, people from this walk of life and that walk of life into a real modern political party. Now, I'm going to tell you this right now because it's going to be kind of cool to know later. The big guy behind the mechanization of this party will be Jackson's vice president, Martin Van Buren. It's a good name to know for future politics. Martin Van Buren really is the architect of this new party, and they're going to call themselves the Democrats. No longer the Democratic Republicans or the Jeffersonian Republicans, they're just the Democrats. We see Jackson forming a coalition with Calhoun to get the Southern vote, Van Buren to get that New York business vote, the working class New Yorkers, two newspapers in Kentucky to make sure that we're addressing the West, the South, the North, the working class, the plantation class, so that it's a real modern political party that looks like a whole sampling of society. And they're going to argue against these, who they call the nationalist Republicans, like Clay, like Quincy Adams, who prefer a more nationalistic approach, like tariffs, national bank, infrastructure. Those policies I said were like Federalist Light. They're going to call them the nationalist Republicans because they're going to say they want more national power at the expense of states. So now we see the Democratic Republicans come together for how long? One presidency. Just Monroe. And now they're splitting back out into Democrats and nationalist type Democratic Republicans. These Jacksonian Democrats, however, are not going to be so much like Jefferson, a little more party of the everyday people, a little more power in the hands of the working class, as opposed to Jefferson's agrarian beliefs. So this changes policies forever. 1828 shows that if you run a real organized party in an election, you can be very successful. by saying we're going to have southern perspectives, northern perspectives, western perspectives. We're going to appeal to the common man. It changes the way politics works. It's the first election with huge overt mudslinging and propaganda. It's pretty ugly. We have, for the first time, an appeal to the average man. Why? Why do we need to appeal to the average man now? Kat, talk to me.
Because they're more of the common folk.
Yep, but why do we have to appeal to them now? There's always been a lot of common folk. Talk to me.
Because now they remove the voting restrictions.
Because now they can vote, and now they will vote. So we see a bunch of public rallies, we see a bunch of public barbecues, we see a bunch of people getting hammered. Politics in the 1828 is all about getting drunk. It's true. A politician comes to town, I'm going to have a rally. You know, like now, our president has a lot of rallies, I don't quite understand it. But they bring a keg of hard cider from the frontier, everyone drinks a ton, and they're like, I'm going to vote for you because you got me drunk. American politics in 1828. So Jackson wins in 1828 as this common man of the people. The accusations at the time was that Andrew Jackson's wife was a bigamist. She was married to two people at once. Yeah, which actually, fun fact, is true. Jackson's wife does leave her husband, does think he's dead, never gets a divorce. He isn't dead. She marries Jackson. So Jackson is in fact married to a woman who's married to somebody else. And they accuse that John Quincy Adams' wife is a bastard child. So the election gets kind of ugly. It's kind of fun. But Democrats are going to present Jackson as a new nickname. Not new, it's an older nickname of his, Old Hickory. That's his old military nickname because they say he's as tough as a hickory tree, which is a very old, hard tree. They're going to show that he's uneducated as if that's a good thing. It's true. They're going to say he's a war hero, he's a dueler. He'll shoot you if he disagrees, if that's a good thing in politics. And he's a man of the people. Because he's uneducated and an idiot just like you. And Democrats are going to paint Quincy Adams as an out-of-touch, educated, elite aristocrat. The election of 1828, in a lot of ways, resembles the election of 2016. A lot of ways. Trump carries some very Jacksonian qualities. I'm a man of the people. I'm one of you. Even though Jackson is not a man of the people. He's a huge plantation owner. He's filthy rich. He's a lawyer. He's been governor. He's a war hero. He's not a man of the people. Jackson. But he paints himself as one for politics. Trump. I'm just like you. The American system is screwing all of us. I'm going to fight for the common man. No, you're not. You're not a common man. You have a freaking apartment in New York City that's covered in gold. But both small loan of $1 million. You read the article that came out this week? The article came out this week? It's much more than $1 million. He was a millionaire by the time he was 8 years old.
Oh.
Because of his fat. Yeah. I'll send you a link.
I know what you're talking about.
It's a crazy article. So, but this is modern politics. Painting your guy to look better than that guy, as opposed to just having him run on his accomplishments, is modern politics. So, here we go. There's the electoral map. I think that paints a good picture. Look at it. Look at it, look at it. Jackson wins in a landslide. Poor Quincy. Jackson wins 68% of the electoral vote, 56% of the popular vote. He wins by 140,000 votes in only a 1.1 million vote campaign. He wins by a ton, which makes Quincy Adams kind of, at least when his dad ran for re-election, he lost a close election. Jefferson in 1800 was very close.
Oh, yeah, it was close.
Very close. Yeah, super, super close. Now, his son ran for re-election and got, yeah, not good. Not good. But we see in here the factions I'm talking about. Jackson is able to appeal to the West. He's able to appeal to the South. He's able to appeal to the working class in Pennsylvania and New York because of this new Democratic Party that's trying to appeal to a variety of perspectives. Very important. Who is Jackson? They say he grows up in a log cabin. He's a poor guy just like us. He's a war hero. Look at him on his horse. How beautiful. And they're using propaganda and campaign posters like this. Jackson ticket, firm, united, let us be, rallying round our hickory tree. So using like modern, catchy campaign slogans to get their guy elected, to push popular support for their guy. And of course it works because Jackson wins by a lot. So what's unique about him as a politician, he's the first guy from a frontier state to be elected president. Where's he from?
Oh.
Yes. Nope, not Kentucky. Clay's Kentucky. Where's he from?
South Carolina?
No, not South Carolina. No, frontier state. Virginia can't be a frontier state. South Carolina can't be a frontier state.
He's from Missouri.
No, he's not. Tennessee. He's from Tennessee. He's the first president. He's the first president from a non-original state. That's a big deal. Tennessee. Clay's Kentucky. He is the first president to not really have a formal education. G-E-N-N-E-S-S-E. But he is, it's not unique that he's a war hero, right? Washington was a war hero. That's about it, I guess. Now, his inauguration turns into an absolute disaster. So anytime the president gets elected, they have their big inaugural speech in front of Congress. It's a big deal. Because he has such a common man support, all his supporters go to the White House after his speech. They trash the place. They run out of alcoholic punch. It's a huge disaster. Jackson's like pinned against the wall, all his supporters. It's an absolute insane asylum in the White House. Because when you elect a common man type of dude, common type of dudes show up and they just want to get drunk at the White House. Yep. So his inauguration, it really demonstrates his presidency. So this really does show us the end of the era of good feelings. Jackson's victory splits the Democratic Republicans, and it forms the modern foundation of our Democratic Party today. Now, the Democratic Party today is very different than the Democratic Party in 1828. Don't get that twisted. Ignore everything you know about modern politics, I promise. Forget what you know, at least for these 2 hours every English day. Because modern politics don't matter. This new Democratic Party is going to split with the Democratic Republicans. So we have our little Federalist rule here. Our two presidents are Democratic Republicans. They go Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, and Quincy Adams. And now we're going to have a new party system of the Democrats against the National Republicans, who will eventually evolve in the next election into the Whigs. The Whigs. So look at this thing right here. Oh, take a minute to talk to your partner. What's unique about this lineage? 1 minute, go.
Excuse
Not
me?
just that. What's unique about this lineage? Yes.
Because you get white people coming.
Like a peaceful revolution. Yeah.
I know we read it, but I just don't remember.
Aren't they also
Democrats and Whigs will kind of be like Democrats and Federalists.
like
Yeah.
regional states?
Wait, who was the first president?
Probably Quincy Adams. You saw one graph of it.
They're not crazy, but you know, like fancy.
You saw it. You saw the photograph. Did he say he's ugly? That was a photograph.
Jefferson spoke.
Nobody gets that painting where they look ugly. Basically, it's like that early Photoshop is getting painted where they look bad. All right. What's unique? What is unique about this? What's worth discussing about this lineage of presidencies? Brett. Yes, the Adams take oath. You can say that John Adams' presidency ended the Federalists, and then Quincy Adams' presidency ended the Democratic Republicans. Right?
Also, it kind of shows that as time goes on, it's kind of difficult to have a stable party.
No party can rule for too long. That's gonna be an American history thing forever. So looking at the party system, we had the Federalists. They were on the strong government side, yes? Yes. And the Democratic Republicans who weren't. So they went like so. They died. And which direction did they go? Middle. Right in the middle. Yeah, to take some of their policies. What's going to split them is Jackson's going to take the party back over here. And then the Clays and the Quincy Adams are going to take this party over this way and become the Whigs. But first they'll be like the national power type of Republicans. So this will be Democrats The New Orleans Democratic Club originally, and then Whigs over there. All right. Good job, guys. So Jackson and his supporters are trying to return to this ideology of states' rights, freedom, westward expansion, small government, strict interpretation, and so forth. All right? Not strong government, not strong federal government, strong states' rights. Freedom. Individual freedoms. Let me mind my own business. The government should just not be visible in our lives. Right? Whereas we see Clay's policies for a tariff and a bank and infrastructure paid for is much more on this side of things. Quincy Adams National Road is much more of a national power type of thing. National road. So Jackson is a popular candidate because he's a popular dude, but we don't have any idea what his policies are. He doesn't run for president on policies. He runs for president on personality. Modern politics. That's why I say the election 1828 is a very modern election. He doesn't run for president saying, I'm going to fix these 7 things. I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to get rid of that. No. He runs for president and says, I'm a common man. I'm a hero of the people. I'm a war hero. Vote for me. I'm Andrew Jackson. Modern politics. Jackson's supporters want states' rights. They want limited government. They want all of these things. But during the campaign, Jackson never really clarifies his views. He never really tells us what he believes. We don't know what he thinks about banks. We don't know what he thinks about tariffs. We don't know what he thinks about anything, except we know damn well what he thinks about Indian removal. Jackson, as a war hero, has been fighting the Indians in Florida for a long time. Jackson's one of the reasons we have Florida from Spain. By continually going into Florida, violating Spain's rights to kill Indians who are attacking settlers. Jackson hates the Indian presence, so he's very clear on one thing: the Indians got to go. And he will make that very clear in his first term, and then it happens again later. So again, it's a new era in American history. He's the first representation of the common man, even if he's not a common man himself. His party takes advantage of this new common white man voter, and he's going to, like Jefferson, greatly expand the powers of the presidency. That in his time in office, yes, he's a states' rights supporter. He's going to use the executive branch a lot. He's going to use the veto power. He's going to use executive privilege, the executive power, to greatly enlarge what the president can do from a presidential standpoint. Presidential precedence. So now we have some leaders we should know where they stand on this scale of national supremacy versus states' rights. Over on this side, what's the farthest you can get on states' rights? Nullification. Nullification. Whereas over here, the strongest you can get is an elastic clause, John Marshall, federal government supremacy. So let's have Marshall's over here, the old Federalists. These new national Republicans who will become the Whigs, there they are already. People like Quincy Adams and Clay, for party systems is helpful to know. These new Jacksonian Democrats that aren't as crazy as the nullifiers, Jackson and Van Buren. And then we have Calhoun, who I argue to this day is probably the ugliest man in American political history.
That's frightening.
Yeah, there you go.
Elite? Yeah, it looks a little young.
That's a real picture?
Oh, yeah.
That's not a real
I thought that was like a stone head.
That's not a real picture.
Is he alive today?
He's not real.
That's not a real picture.
That's like a sculpture. I mean, that in art class.
Who would hire somebody to make a sculpture that would look uglier? Why do all these paintings look nice?
You don't look nice.
This is them better looking than they actually look. Like getting a portrait painted is early Photoshop. Like, hey, paint a picture of me, but make sure that you take out my scar over here on my face, and make sure I don't look like a freaking crazy person. Right? Camera don't lie. So keep in mind, like, this is a good picture of Quincy Adams. You guys saw a photograph of him.
Oh, yeah.
It's not good. Right? This is a good picture of Andrew Jackson. You'll see some photographs of him. They're not good. Getting a portrait painted, you're supposed to look better than you look in real life. When you get a picture taken, that's how you look. So but I need you guys to get your mind around this spectrum of views on the Constitution. Full constitutional supremacy, full nullification. Both regular parties, the normals, are kind of in the middle. These guys, they just prefer national power, national infrastructure, national bank, national tariff. These guys prefer states' rights. This is my point about being a states' rights supporter, but not going as far as believing in nullification. So Jackson, there he is. Jackson's two-term presidency, he's president for 2 terms, was defined by 3 major conflicts. 3 big conflicts. Nullification, Indian removal, the bank. Today we'll talk about the first 2. The bank is for Monday. The bank deserves its own day. Before I get to the 2 big issues, there's some small issues that play a big role later. So Jackson is elected by what kind of dude? Anybody else want to answer that question? Jackson is elected by what kind of dude? Yeah, common man. So what he does when he becomes president is he gives his supporters a bunch of government jobs. Talk to your partner for 1 minute. What is the benefit of giving your supporters a bunch of jobs in the government? What is the disadvantage of giving your friends a bunch of jobs in the government? 1 minute, chat it out, go.
Pretty cool. But $1 million worth of
Because it shows that
more people.
More importantly, I hear you, but I see you as well. I see you. All right. So, Christoph, what's the advantage to giving jobs to your supporters?
Well, they know what they're going through. They know what they want for to change. So that's why it's good to give them government jobs. So they'll do what they think is the best for them.
Loyalty, right? You're rewarding people that supported you. Yeah. What's the disadvantage? How do you go?
They're not qualified.
Ah! They're not qualified. Or they're dumb. Or isn't loyalty also a disadvantage?
Yes, they can use it against you.
Think about it this way. Say I'm going to go start my own school. Be a badass school. Craig Winchell. School, Academy.
Craig Winchell.
Me and Patty Beer are very
Alliance, Winchell, and Montes.
No, that's my point. So if I was going to go start a school, should I hire Montes?
No.
No. That's my homie.
So?
So?
Well, he can take advantage of you.
He doesn't he always?
Watch your pocket.
Oh, yeah.
So, or should I hire Cerna who just takes all my stuff and just uses it for himself and never says thank you?
Like turtles.
I'm okay with that. My point is, why should I take Montes to start a school with me?
Because he has the same ideas as you.
Because he's qualified.
That's fair.
Not because he's my friend.
You help me?
No, because he's qualified.
So that's the point. Is it's important when you think about this that there's benefits in loyalty. And I know what to get out. I know that he's an above average teacher at best. Absolutely, it happens. I'm not going to take Cerner because I have a strict no creepy mustache policy. So, moral of the story, Jackson's giving supporters jobs because they're simply supporters. What this creates, though, is this new system called the spoils system. You ever heard the expression, to the victor goes the spoils? If you win, you get the spoils of war. So in this case, the spoils system is I won the election, my supporters get all the jobs. That's the way it works. This creates a huge turnover in the government that has not occurred yet. It's called the civil service. It's important later, the Pendleton Civil Service Reform Act. And we're going to keep this policy for a long time. That whoever gets elected, they get to pick all the jobs for all the federal government appointees. Jobs like tariff tax collector, harbor controller, post office mailman, postmaster general. Important government jobs that pay well, that are all over the country, that are all appointed by the president. All those jobs go to Jackson supporters. We start to actually see this idea as a very democratic way to live, because you're reducing you're switching who works in the government, you give more people opportunities to work in the government, it expands people's access to the government, but it does create a ton of corruption because you're just rewarding your friends. Jackson's not the first person to do this. He just expands it to the most amount of people. The way Jackson justifies it, it says, let's get their rascals out and our rascals in. Acknowledging everybody's corrupt, but at least PR corrupt, guys. Good. So I have a cartoon for you. It's a good one. It's a very, very good one. I'm going to give you 3 minutes with your partner to discuss the cartoon's historical context. That's pretty straightforward. Who's its audience? Who's it drawn for? What is the purpose of this cartoon? What's it trying to demonstrate? And what is the point of view? So 3 minutes. Work together, talk together, but I need something written down for H, I, P, and P. By the time that 3 minutes is done, go. Jackson's election. That's 2. You saw Nanny, I sent you Nanny.
Yeah. So historical context. Wait, we fill out the list? So historical context, Jackson, the election, the popular vote.
Spoil.
I bet the team starts like here because of like a lot of guys that came here really highly regarded and were pushed out by like the stars. I want to see this play like that. They didn't have like super high levels. Like, how did that guy that played with him?
Republican. What's the other party?
But I'd like to see a team that's more like fun to watch.
Devin, give me tissue, white scars.
Thank you for sharing, brother. 1 minute left. I need some break. Come on. Exactly. Thank you.
Is it purpose or point of view?
Bleeding? Jesus.
Are you done?
Who's it drawn for? At least got a point of view and purpose. Come on, Brandon. Help me.
So point of view
Pro spoiler system? What's the pig doing?
It's being dominating. It's being dominated. Aren't the wait, is the pig
You're saying that Jacksonian drew that?
Maybe.
because he's victorious because he's dominating. That's not bad.
No.
No, he's being controlled by
In memoriam, our civil service as it was. Let's talk about the cartoon. So you're gonna have 30 seconds, wrap up your thoughts, make sure you've written something down. Yes. All men are made. Right? Every pig.
we should be trying.
All right. So let's talk about this cartoon. Let's talk about this cartoon. Some people I hear are interpreting it as pro-Jackson. I hear others interpreting it as anti-Jackson. Elio, what do you think, sir? There's no shame in being wrong. We're getting better at political cartoons. It's fine. No, what? Just in general, what do you construe this as?
I see it as anti-oil system because, well, this is just me from logic perspective. If you're trying to argue that the spoil system was good, you wouldn't make. I think that's Jackson writing the hog.
Oh yeah.
You wouldn't make him be riding a hog, rather something that's more.
More gallant.
Yeah.
A beautiful white horse, like his statue in New Orleans
Oh, cool.
for the Battle of New Orleans. Yeah, right. There should be a statue to the ladders. Kat, what did you think?
Now that you said it was anti, I kind of see it as that way. At first I thought it was pro, because, you know, spoil system, and then how it's a democratic view, and all that stuff. And it was like, I thought it was intended, obviously, for Jackson's supporters.
Okay.
So I kind of saw it as pro, like, that's how they made it.
So what's the pig eating? What's the pig doing?
Eating all of the goods Jackson provided.
He plunder. Plunder means to steal. Fraud, bribery. There's a skeleton down here.
Cool.
It's covered in money signs. He looks super happy about it. Yeah, let's go. Got the White House in the background. And it says, in memoriam. Like, rest in peace. Our civil service as it was. So, in fact, I can totally see why you guys interpret it both ways. That's okay. In fact, it is an anti-Jackson, anti-spoil system, showing that all the spoil system is a chance for his followers to get rich off of these jobs, off of bribery opportunities, off of opportunistic politics, and it's killed the fact that our civil service, our bureaucracy, all these jobs from the government used to be pure and clean and good for the society, and now they are being taken advantage of for political gain. So its purpose is to show that Jackson's spoil system is corrupt. Point of view is anti-Jackson. And it's important that we understand its audience, of course, is for the against Jackson's non-supporters, Jackson's opponents. So if you got it wrong, no biggie. I promise you, have plenty of political cartoons to practice with, and you will see probably 500 of them this year. So buckle up. You right, Hector? So one of the first things Jackson does is screw Henry Clay. Jackson's a penny-ass dude. I love it. So we see, turn your page, we see that the split into the National Republicans versus the Jacksonian Democrats. Quincy Adams and Clay are kind of anti-Jackson in this. So the first thing Jackson does is strike a huge blow to Clay's American system. Partially because he hates Clay. Partially because he hates big government. Mostly because he hates Clay. And he's still salty as hell about 1824. Which I dig. I love a little salty politician. He's okay with national projects. So like Quincy Adams' National Road, Jackson has no problem using federal money for. Why?
State powers.
I said Jackson has no problem with national projects. Projects like Quincy Adams' National Road that goes from Baltimore all the way to St. Louis. He has no problem with those projects.
Wasn't he in between the Federalist and the Democratic Republicans?
But why is he okay with those kinds of projects?
Because it helps, I mean,
It doesn't show state power.
Yeah, because it goes across multiple states. It's a project that benefits multiple states. No problem spending money for that. He has a problem with projects the federal government's paying for that are state specific. He thinks that should be a state right issue. He's okay with big national projects, but does not like spending federal money for state projects. For example, in today's society, Would he be okay if we were going to build a bullet train from here to Texas? Yeah. Would he be okay with paying for a bullet train from here to San Francisco? No. So that should be a state project, all in California. Does that help? Good. So 1830, Jackson vetoes a bill. It's already passed. Congress passes the bill. We're going to give this money to the Maysville Road. It's a new road. It's going to be in Kentucky. It's going to be in Kentucky, and Jackson gets the bill on his desk and says, veto. I'm canceling it. He says I'm canceling it because it's only in Kentucky. Where's Henry Clay from? Kentucky. So, who sponsored the bill? Whose idea was the bill? Henry Clay. And as part of this beautiful Clay's American system, Jackson's like, ha-ha, ha-ha, I win. I win. Veto. Jackson vetoes 7 other bills of public works projects, mostly roads and canals, all because they are state-specific projects, not national projects. Kentucky, of course, is the home of Henry Clay, who Jackson has still not forgiven for this corrupt bargain, so he takes a good opportunity to stab Clay in the back and veto his bill. Veto his road. Sorry, Clay, you don't get what you want. I'm the president now. What's up? So I'm going to give you 2 minutes. This is Clay's response. Clay's speech in Congress afterwards is like, hey, I'm upset. My bill got vetoed. I wanted my road. What's the deal? So Clay's going to tell you why he's upset, why he's mad at Jackson, what his issue is. I'm going to give you just 3 to read it, respond as a quick action to the speech. I'm upset. But 3 minutes to get your text analysis on. Then you can respond to the question. Yes? Sorry. 3 minutes. Chop, chop. Chris, where'd you put the house?
Somewhere.
It probably filled me up there.
It's up there.
It's in there.
Probably behind the shelf.
Okay, what's it going to do back there? Go back to reading. I don't need 10 people to solve this problem. Okay, so read. Good job, Chris. Take a minute, talk to your person. What is Clay's opposition to being vetoed? Why is he upset? Why does he think it should be okay to have this road get passed? Take a minute to talk about it. Go for it. Why is he sad, Brett?
Why is Jackson feeling all these concerns?
Where's your girl at? So, why, I'm going to pick on, I'll pick on Kelly. Kelly, talk to us. What is Clay's argument or justification for the road to project to go through? Big part is one. The western states need the federal government to pay for infrastructure to connect the west to the rest of the country. Huge part. Where's Clay from? From the west. So of course a little bit of selfish justification there as well. That these areas out here are less developed. If you want us to keep feeding it and supporting the rest of the country economically, we have to have infrastructure. What's his constitutional reason, Slane?
Well, I put that. First of all, it can
Okay.
count as like unconstitutional, but also because the veto power of Jackson is stronger than
Yeah, he said Congress passed it and Jackson has no constitutional right to veto it. He uses the elastic clause. It's right there in the third line. I thought it was the authority to construct such improvements as may be deemed by Congress necessary and proper to carry into effect the powers granted. That's an important line. That he's pointing out, like, it's Congress has the power to do this. Unless Jackson has a constitutional opposition to it, as opposed to a personal opposition, what's the problem? We have 20-something other laws that have been passed in the same way. We have 20-something other projects that relate to a single state. No problem with any of them. But now that it's a Kentucky problem, now all of a sudden Jackson cares. Salty ass Jackson. On to his next big issue being Indian removal. Southerners are upset with Quincy Adams taking forever to get rid of the natives, who of course were there at first. Jackson promises in his campaign to act quickly, but there's a significant problem with the Cherokee tribe. The Cherokee tribe gives him a very specific problem. The problem with the Cherokees, anybody? They're too civilized. We can't use the justification of they can't survive in a civilized society because they are civilized. They have a legal system. They have a republic-type government where they're electing their leaders. They have a written alphabet. The Cherokee has every single part of society that you identify with a civilized society. So now how can we remove them? That whole argument, well, they have to move because they're not civilized like us, so they can't exist in our society, doesn't work because they're civilized. They're not uncivilized, they have a Republican government, they have an agrarian lifestyle, they have a formal alphabet, and, unlike other tribes, they refuse to move. So we finally have some pushback on the native part of saying, like, no, you can't make us move. Also, they have established a treaty with the state of Georgia. When Georgia first removed them from where they were in the first place, Georgia said, just go inland, we'll leave that land for you until we want it. But they have a treaty that says, this land is ours, you gave it to us, you put us here. And now you want us to move? They're not going to declare war. They're going to be smart. They're going to declare legal war. Unfortunately for the Cherokee, gold is discovered in their territory. And the only thing white people like more than burning things down is gold. So Georgia says, oh, there's gold. That treaty we gave you that says this is your land, that treaty's gone. The treaty's void. Beat it. And the Cherokee are like, we entered that treaty with two parts. One part doesn't get to cancel it. Not the way it works. The Georgia government abolishes Cherokee tribal rule and defies the Constitution, which gives power to treaties on both sides. And Jackson says, yep, sorry Indians, let's pass a new law called the Indian Removal Act of 1830, which says all Indians in the southeast, the 5 civilized tribes, Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, 2 more, I'll come back to that, they gotta go. So Congress agrees with them, passes a quick law, Indian Removal Act, you guys gotta leave. The Cherokee go to the Supreme Court. And they say, wait a second, we have a contract. Our contract is with the state of Georgia, and our contract says we can stay right here on our land where they said we can be. Pretty badass. The Supreme Court rules in 2 subsequent cases. This case is unclear, but in Worcester versus Georgia, that the states do not have power over the tribes. It is the federal government who has power over the tribes, and because there is a treaty, the Indians can stay. Who is the Supreme Court Chief Justice? John Marshall. So of course he's going to rule the federal government and contract rights have supremacy over state decisions. Sorry, Georgia, you can't get rid of them. 2 more important Marshall cases. Georgia says, sorry, Supreme Court, we don't care what you say. We're going to just keep on taking their land and removing them. And Jackson famously says, well, John Marshall made his decision. Let him enforce it. I'll say that again. John Marshall made his own decision. Let him enforce the decision. Whose job is it to enforce the law? Which branch?
Executive.
The executive branch. So Marshall's almost saying, like, I don't even care what Jackson's saying. I don't care what Marshall said. Good for him. I'm not going to listen. We're getting rid of the Indians. Constitutional? No. Does Jackson do it anyway? Goddamn right he does. By 1838, the U.S. Army were called in to forcibly remove the Cherokees on what becomes known as the Trail of Tears. All 5 civilized tribes, the Cherokee are the main one who fight it, but it's also the Creek Indians, the Seminole, the Choctaw, and the Chickasaw, are all sent to what becomes known as Indian Territory. In modern day, anybody know that state? Oklahoma. Modern day Oklahoma. Where they are said, you'll be safe here. This will be your land for the rest of time. Until we want it. Exactly. Of course, this does not happen under Jackson's presidency. It's Martin Van Buren's problem by then. But it follows this Jacksonian push to get rid of Native Americans, and it shows that Jackson has very little regard for other branches of government. He's going to do things his way. You'll read a good essay on that for homework this weekend. Your homework is only 2 pages of reading. 2 pages of reading. I know. Whenever I give you a long chapter like that, I reward you on the back end. It's the first time that's happened. I know it's a long time. Here is a depiction of the removal, but it's a very sad black eye, not black guy, black eye in American history. And I'm going to have you read Jackson's justification. So take 4. Yeah, it looks lit with smallpox. Take 4 minutes, because this is eye-opening as well. How does Jackson justify removing the Indians anyway? All right, take 4 minutes to respond for me, please. Go for it. You're reading. And then we get into our final issue, nullification. You're reading. Jackson's justification. for now. We're going to period 6 is the last portion of the Indians, the Gaza Act, the reservation policy. And they're also just being pushed. This is the last big resistance in the South. All right, so real quick, John, talk to me. What is Jackson's justification? Why is he okay getting rid of the Native Americans?
Well, he says that it would benefit everyone.
Oh, yes, that lovely benefit of kicking you off your tribal land, giving you smallpox, and sending you to Oklahoma. Who signs up for that trip? You guys all in? Nobody's in for that?
Sure.
I've never been to
The
Oklahoma.
only reason that Luis is in is it's close to Mississippi, where of course he'd like to settle in. They're outside of you. Talk to me, Santos. Good job, Travis.
Oh no, so on the topic of civilization, would at this time he would be considering any Christian civilized, or?
As long as it's a white Christian.
Yeah, because he said like at the end of the first paragraph to cast off their savage habits and become an interesting civilized and Christian.
So look at that addition to the conversation, right? So yeah, they're civilized politically and economically, but because they're not civilized, and then you did this. For the video record, that was Jenry's mess up. Yeah, they're not civilized because they're not white. So we're adding qualifications to civilization, and he thinks it's best. Does he think they can coexist? Does he think Indians and white people can coexist together? No. He says it's better off for them to go out there and better off for us to take their land. Shall we do some to add?
Well, I mean, just to make it more specific, he says that it will strengthen the southwestern frontier.
Yeah.
From the invasion.
Yeah, it'll strengthen the southwestern frontier to make sure we're safe, make sure we're secure. So turn your page. And then I'm going to give you a minute to answer with your friend. If you sit next to a friend, if not, with your acquaintance. How does this How does this action reinforce the executive branch? How does this action make the presidency stronger? Talk about it, write about it, take a minute, go.
Gives the president more power.
How? Why?
They don't need to make decisions. They don't need to stop other
Jackson went against Supreme Court rules. Or even
Go over your notes. Why? Like your homework becomes blank all the time?
He doesn't need to, Congress to make a decision.
Oh, it's just that? Have the questions? You can't lie to me.
I got the whole packet.
I got people. So, how does this strengthen the executive branch, Johnny?
It gave power to like as a president because he like did what he wanted to. Even like as John Marshall, he wanted like to not let the Indians move. He didn't like, care about that.
Yes. Yeah, so it's the first time we see a president like just doing whatever the hell he wants and not worrying about repercussions. Right? It shows a lot of executive action. It loosens the power of the presidency. Good. Okay, so our last issue is tariffs. It's going to take us the rest of class, which there's not that much time left in. No, I love that surprise face in the class. It's almost over. We just got 27 minutes now. I got this. So, by the 1820s and 30s, sectionalism is showing a clear divide over the issue of tariffs. We already see sectionalism on slavery. But now we're seeing sectionalism on tariffs. And remember, it's just an import. It's important, guys. It's just an import tax. British-made cloth, for example, costs $4 a roll. How do we make sure they buy American? You pass an import tax. But let me show you the views of tariffs and why they matter. Northern states are going to become pro-tariff. I'm about to take the trash out real quick. Pick you up right now. Carry you over my head. And drop the trash in the hole. Now, northern states like tariffs. This is why. Here's the northern perspective. Foreign goods are made more expensive. Step one. People buy more U.S. goods because they're cheaper. Step two. Do tariffs actually lower the price of U.S. goods? No, they just make the competition more expensive. Step three. Northern industrial states profit from the increased business. And then in theory, they hire more people. More people are working, they can pay their workers more. Problem solved. This is pretty straightforward. Why are the southern states not happy with tariffs then?
They get stuff with
They don't have manufactured goods? They get stuck with the bill, kind of. Let's talk about it. So, now the first two steps are the same thing. Foreign goods are more expensive. People buy more U.S. goods. Same steps. Step three is where it gets interesting. European countries retaliate because they're selling less stuff here. They buy less cotton. The big thing that's being tariffed is textiles. What makes textiles? Cotton. Where do they buy their cotton? America. If they're making less textiles, what do they need less of? Cotton. Where does the cotton come from? The South. First problem, European countries buy less southern cotton. To make Europe happy, the South keeps buying their goods from Europe, even though the tariff makes it more expensive. Because they know if they stop buying stuff from Europe, and the northern states stop buying stuff from Europe, all of a sudden nobody's buying stuff from Europe. Europe's no longer buying southern cotton. So the southern prices increase because they're buying it even though there's a tariff, so they're paying higher prices. That screws the southern economy. the economy of southern states suffers as a result. And then we start seeing European countries add tariffs to the American economy, because it doesn't just go, economics is not just a one-way street. And now the entire southern economy is built on having to buy things through tariffs to make the buyers of their cotton happy. Now, what could the South do? I have an idea. Grow something other than cotton. I don't know, anything else. I have a second idea that the South could do. Industrialize. I have a third idea. Even if you want to grow cotton, how about you try something called diversify your economy? You could have some areas that are agriculture, some areas that are cash croppy, some areas that are industrialized. Instead, the South just keeps on sucking it up and doing cotton in the short term because cotton makes them rich as time is now. It's going to bite them in the ass later. So this tariff issue becomes a big deal, and the North and the South differ greatly on tariffs because they do different things for both parts of the economy. Or, I have another idea. The South could only grow enough cotton to just fuel the northern economy. We could be all self-sustainable, self-sufficient. We wouldn't need Europe anymore. Why doesn't the South do that? What? They want more money. Yeah, profit. Short-term profit over long-term success. Brett, I'm going to give you $100 right now. Or I'm going to give you $5 for the next 25 weeks. What are you taking? $100 right now. Because Brett's an idiot. I offered him $5 for 25 weeks. Yeah. And he took $100 up front instead. Short-term profit over long-term success. Carry the 6, yes. So I have a cartoon for you. It's a real quick one. Take a minute, talk to your partner. What is this cartoon depicting and why? What's the point of view of this cartoon? Yeah, that's the right one. It's not on your notes, it's just for discussion. Talk about it. 1 minute. Chat it out, go.
The right one, right? The right. That isn't. There's 4 right now. I don't want this eating here.
Better hurry. Right? Looks like you're in his pants. 3, 2, 1, done. So let's look at this cartoon. Josue, did you want to focus on hips instead of the perspective of the cartoon? Josue, what is the point of view here? What's this trying to depict? Shh.
Not sure.
So because you spent more time talking about Josue's Brett's hips instead of Chris, talk to us, sir.
They have to deal with all these tariffs and taxes, while I think that's the union on the right is like kind of enjoys it, and to the right you see domestic manufacturers.
Domestic manufacturers are getting fat because of the tariff. While on this side they're weighing on the South. I know. See, subtle, sneaky. Yeah, the North is doing just fine, and it's the South that stays skinny and poor and living in the toilet because of tariffs and taxes. Well, they spelled things differently in 1828. My bad. Toilet. They like to limit the vowels. So that's the tariff issue in general. Getting into specifics. By 1820, because of the Missouri Compromise, because of that Talmadge Amendment I talked about yesterday, the southern states are really worried about federal power over the states. If I let the federal government regulate blank, they might come for my... Yeah, exactly. Calhoun becomes this big defender of states' rights. He wants to protect slavery. He's very anti-industrial tariff. And at the very end of Quincy Adams' presidency, the tariff of 1828, called by the South the Tariff of Abominations. This is an abomination. This is an outrage. This is unacceptable. The South argues, yep, we can nullify this bad boy if we want to. They don't nullify it, but they argue that they can. They say an individual state can ignore federal laws. This is written by Calhoun, who at the time is vice president. So now this is the second time a sitting vice president has written an argument for nullification. Who was the first?
Jefferson.
Jefferson. Because of the Alien Edition Acts under Adams. In this case, he writes, in the South Carolina Exposition and Protest, very important text, that to protect Southern rights, to protect Southern self-interest, we need to make sure we have the right to nullify. Unlike Jefferson, he does not argue it from a constitutional standpoint. He argues it from a sectional standpoint. That's the big new step. Jefferson is saying this law is unconstitutional. Calhoun is saying this law doesn't benefit us. Big new step. It's a big jump. Jefferson argues in good faith, and Calhoun argues in selfish faith. Southerners hate the tariffs for two reasons. One, it makes the cost of foreign goods more expensive. And two, like I told you, countries respond with high tariffs on American cotton. Phenomenal cartoon. I'll give you a minute to analyze it with your partner to make sure we can finish on time. This says South Carolina. There's South Carolina's state flag. Take a minute to talk about it. Go. What? Yeah. What is this cartoon depicting?
Yeah,
Quick, hurry up.
Daniel. It was Daniel this time.
No. You cannot blame me.
Aristocracy. Southern aristocracy.
You win or not?
Oh, crazy. Kind of. It's implying it, right? They're trying to get away from the Union. It's a good cartoon. A good cartoon. Crazy. All right. So I love this cartoon because it makes South Carolina look hilarious. So how is South Carolina depicted?
A donkey.
A donkey? Anytime you have something that precedes ocracy, what does it imply? Democracy. Yeah, who runs? Who controls? So theocracy, the church controls. Democracy, the people control. Aristocracy. So what are they implying? Who runs the South? Southern aristocracy. The asses, the crazy asses are running the South. Southern, I know, good play on words, right? Southern ass-stock crazy. Crazy assholes are running the South. And to your point, Chavez, what's South Carolina trying to do?
I said secede.
Yeah, you're right. They're trying to get their way out of the Union, but they're too dumb of a donkey to do so. It's a good cartoon. It's a good cartoon. So the tariff debate, turn your page, quickly, because we gotta finish these issues. Finish our Jackson up well. The tariff debates are going to start increasing sectional rivalries as the North will use the argument to assert federal dominance. The South will argue for states' rights, all about tariffs. The underlying argument is all about slavery, let's be honest. In 1829, so right after this, a New England congressman introduces a new bill to slow down Western land sales. Because all these Western lands are becoming more states' rights, Democratic Republicans. The bill was really an effort to keep New England's power in Congress from slipping away. This is almost like a new Hartford Convention, in a sense. This bill is going to lead to a huge important debate called the Webster-Hayne debates. I cannot stress to you how significant these are at the time in American history, because both these guys are super famous. We already talked about Daniel Webster. Very significant dudes. And they're arguing from the northern perspective of union and the southern perspective of states' rights. It becomes a very defining moment in American history. Robert Hayne, he's from, of course, South Carolina, is going to propose nullification. He's going to say South Carolina can nullify whatever they want, and he's going to start arguing that maybe the South and West should create a new political alliance against the Northeast.
Confederates?
What?
Confederates?
Eventually, 30 years later.
Foreshadowing.
Hayne is going to say that most important is liberty. Liberty comes first. Union comes afterwards. Freedom comes first, then we can talk about union. Webster's going to say, screw you. It's union first. That's how we guarantee our liberties. That's how we guarantee our freedom, by having a country. No country, no freedom. Webster argues liberty and union together, now and forever, one and inseparable. Robert Hayne, sit down. Sit down. So I'm going to give you just 5. I'm going to let you not answer the questions now, but just skim both arguments to figure out what is Hayne arguing and how, what is Webster arguing and how, so we can have a quick 1-minute discussion about it and make sure we finish our discussion on time. Okay? So I don't need you to answer the questions, but I need you to read quickly, take 5, skim through both of them, understand both arguments, and then we'll talk about it from there. 5 minutes, go. Read. About 2 minutes left. All your bread and water. 4 left. I love how Hayne references the Virginia Kentucky Resolution. Makes me happy. Revolution, blames the Hartford Convention too. Okay. He is arguing the compact theory. Webster would argue the contract theory. Pretty good argument. All right, 20 seconds to quick skim. Make sure you get a quick skim to both arguments. All right, so it's pretty clear to me. Hayne uses the compact theory argument that the states need to provide a check on the federal government. The states are there to check the federal government. The federal government's not going to check itself. He references the Virginia Kentucky resolutions. He references the Hartford Convention as well. That's pointing out it's not just the South that does it, but New England tried it once as well, which is accurate. And Webster says no. Liberty and union now and forever, one and inseparable. It's our country altogether that guarantees these ideas of freedom. So the significance is that this idea of union is reaffirmed. Very important. But this idea of tariffs is not gone. So your bottom question. Many in South Carolina look at that tariff of 1828 as a wedge. As something that's going to allow the federal government to get more involved in South Carolina. And then they're going to come for our slaves. They're coming. The tariff is passed by Jackson in 1832, which actually lower rates. It doesn't lower rates enough. South Carolina thinks that Jackson, as a Southerner, is going to come to their aid and he can get rid of the tariff. Jackson's like, no, we still kind of got to pay the bills. He lowers tariff rates, but it doesn't go down enough to make them happy. So we have a new nullification crisis. Now South Carolina says, we're not going to pay that tariff. I don't care what you do. You guys can go to hell. It's not happening. And Jackson, who up to this point isn't more of a supporter of states' rights, gets freaking furious. Because he believes in states' rights, but he believes in union. Jackson's reaction, he says, I will send the army to South Carolina and I will hang John C. Calhoun from the nearest tree.
Cool.
The former vice president to Jackson, I will hang him from the nearest tree. South Carolina says, we're not backing down, I don't care. Calhoun's like, bro, everyone's cool. I'm not trying to hang, dog. I'm good. If no compromise is reached, it looks like we're on the verge of civil war. Jackson's starting to send the army. South Carolina says, do it, we don't care. South Carolina starts planning for the war. They create a militia. They're ready to do it. We're going to have a civil war. Who steps in? Henry Clay. Just like the Missouri Compromise, Henry Clay saves the country again. The Compromise Tariff of 1833, which is called the olive branch and the sword. It gives an olive branch, a symbol of peace, to South Carolina by saying, hey, we'll drop tariffs 10% every year for 8 years. We can't drop them all right away, but we'll drop them over time. South Carolina says, yeah, we won. We got it. It's debated very aggressively, but it's finally passed in 1833. And it gives the force bill, the sword, the act of force, to Jackson, which says, if needed, if it comes to this, Jackson, you can use the military to force South Carolina to follow the national rules. So it allows both sides to say, we got what we wanted. To not say, I didn't back down and lose. South Carolina can back away with dignity by saying we got the tariffs reduced, and Jackson can back away saying, I didn't have to use force, and they're the ones that backed away. So the real big picture here is that Jackson is a Westerner. Jackson likes states' rights, but he says union comes first. He's an anti-nullification foe, and if necessary, he will use force to keep the country together. He threatened to hang Calhoun from a tree. That's pretty forceful. That's pretty forceful. So what this nullification crisis reveals, though, is that we have some serious divides between states' rights advocates and federal government supremacy advocates. And if we need a crazy compromise every time somebody disagrees with the federal law, we're in for some trouble. If we have this much tension over tariffs, wait till slavery comes out. If we have this much problems over some simple taxes on imports that are supposed to benefit the whole country, wait till we're fighting about the future of the country via slavery. That's what it reveals. Is this era of good feelings, by this point, is long gone. Way in the rearview mirror. Now the last piece I'll leave you with is one of the finest political cartoons ever made. And I actually didn't have time today, so good on me. We have 3 minutes left. Take a minute with your partner to talk about it. What is it? What do you see? What's going on? It's a badass cartoon.
Together as one, they're no longer one.
Ah. Yeah, what's the deal? Good job.
Yeah.
What's up, Ash?
This.
Control in the hands of one despot, one person with too much power. Oh my God. No, it's just it's a bridge. You read the big chapter? That chapter was like 40 pages long. You read that? Right. So let me stop you here. So I need us to get this in our heads before the day is out. I'll keep you in the lunch happily.